Today's video is going to be dealing with a sensitive topic that might be a trigger for some people who have had experiences with abuse. So I just want to give that warning to begin. We will be talking about what do we do as followers of Jesus when there is the reality of abuse within the church, or when the church is involved and fails to be a support for victims or to be someone that will step in and protect them from further abuse. I will be going over something that is going on with the Southern Baptist Convention, and we will discuss what we can do as followers of Jesus in handling situations of abuse. I'll be reading from an article, which if you want to read it yourself, I'll leave the link in the description below of this video. We'll be talking about the Southern Baptist Convention, and for those of you that might not be familiar with who are they or what are they, the Southern Baptist Convention is the largest Protestant denomination. Within Christianity, there are different denominations. Christians who hold to the core beliefs that, qualifies you as a Christian. Those are my new kitties. But they hold different views when it comes to like secondary issues, everything that's not like the core issues. And so the largest denomination is this one that we'll be talking about. So let me read this article. It's really short. Following a months-long investigation, a bombshell report dealing with how the Southern Baptist denomination handled sexual abuse cases has been released. The 7-month investigation was handled by Guidepost Solutions at the request of the Southern Baptist Convention after a vote authorizing the probe in June 2021. Southern Baptists are the country's largest Protestant denomination. The report alleges survivors of sexual abuse encountered resistance, stonewalling, and even outright hostility from some on the SBC's executive committee. Guidepost made several recommendations in the wake of the report. Establish an abuse reform implementation task force to institute reform based on the Guidepost report. The recommendations would be reported at next year's convention. Establish a ministry check website to alert the community to the presence and activity of credibly accused offenders. Hire a subject matter expert to receive calls, provide guidance when sexual abuse is reported, and work with state organizations on training and educational efforts. Require SBC boards and committees to have training regarding preventing sexual abuse and survivor care, as well as undergo background checks. And the last one is provide education at seminaries and through other SBC programs in regard to prevention, training, and sexual abuse survivor care. The executive committee is set to meet in special session Tuesday to discuss the report. So I do want to start off by saying that although we are reading about something very relevant and having completely to do with the Southern Baptist Convention, that doesn't mean that these things are not happening in other denominations. It just seems that they are very well organized and that they voted on this matter which had been an issue for many years, decades even. And so they finally reached the point where they voted in favor of doing a third party investigation. And so it's one of those things that you have to take very seriously, that a lot went into the investigation. And if you do want to read the 288-page document of the investigation, you can. It's within the article. You can read that for yourself. But a lot does go into this investigation. And for them to have a third party look into it, it's supposed to be a non-biased investigation, right? For them to have concluded that they did find that there was resistance, stonewalling, and even outright hostility, that's just heartbreaking, or at least it should be to every pastor of any denomination. And, it's one of those things where it's so easy for, let's just say men, but women, of course, as well, for men to just make it into this political or emotional thing that it doesn't have to be. Like, let's just talk about this. This is an issue. Let's just stick to this topic. Let's just talk about the facts. Okay. There's plenty of room for discussing, the politics or the emotional aspect. Who is helping, who isn't helping, and so forth. Let's just talk about the facts, what we just read. And don't get distracted by all the politics and whatnot. If you are a pastor, you need to care about this issue. You need to not think that, this is damaging the church. No, what is damaging is not addressing this and not doing things to make sure it stops happening. Forget about your loyalties, forget about your friendships, forget about the perceptions you may have of the people that are working in your pastoral staff. Okay, you do not know people behind their home doors, and it's nice to think that we do, but we don't. And if there is something that there are people that are coming to you and telling you, hey, this person, this pastor has done something, you need to take that seriously. You need to assume, maybe I don't know this person as well as I thought I did. There is something to say about how pastors, God bless them. This is not to come down on you at all or to take away anything from everything that you do. For the kingdom of God, you pour your life out, right? You serve, and you probably deal with a lot of things like isolation and, depression and probably anxiety and all those things. So let's just acknowledge that you do a lot. But we are living in a broken world. That means that your staff is also composed of broken people. Even if they are following Jesus, they are not going to always, make the right choices. They are going to fail. And it's important to keep that in mind. It's important to set boundaries, to have something in your structure to help with that brokenness. And I absolutely think that that the members of your church that are coming to you with these abuse stories, experiences, they should not be ignored. They should be valued just as much as we value the pastoral staff. One is not more important than the other. And honestly, I think God values one sheep just as much as he values all of the flock, right? We have a parable in the Bible where Jesus spoke about this shepherd that went. He left the bunch of the sheep behind to go look for that one sheep, and that there's great celebration for that one lost sheep that is found. That symbolic of how much one soul is valuable to God and the kingdom. And so, if there is someone that has experienced abuse in your church, and you're more concerned about the whole of the church more so than that one person, or you're more concerned even about your own job, keeping your own job, because you happen to be the one that has perpetuated that abuse, then you are not really following Jesus. You are a hypocrite. Just like the rest of the hypocrites that we have recorded throughout history, that they were abusive to women, to boys, to children, to men. I mean, abuse comes in all forms, right? And you are not qualified to be an example and to lead other people to follow Jesus if you yourself are not following Jesus. Every person is valuable. And if one person, even just one person in your church, is dealing with this terrible thing that happened to them, and you don't care about that person, it's like you're not even behaving the way that Jesus would in that situation. I think Jesus would be very upset. I think Jesus would call you out as a hypocrite. I think Jesus would tell you, hey, step down, because you're hurting my sheep. And so it is important for us to care about even just one person that is affected by this, because it could affect their whole life. They will carry that for the rest of their life. And now you're attaching Jesus' name to that, Jesus' church to that experience. It's not like that person dealt with that like just in their home or, somewhere outside of the church. But it's people that believe and are supposed to be their leaders that are not paying attention to them and are not loving them and are not caring about them. And definitely that will have an impact. And I think that's more important than keeping your favorite pastor or a very charismatic speaker in your staff. I know of at least one situation where it ended up being on the news. And it's like churches, they're looking out for themselves, really. And they don't want to come out on the news. So they're going to try to cover whatever failures are happening in their church. And I think that's very unfortunate, because I believe that people that think that the church has a special authority over people, that they try to they pretend like our government is irrelevant to the structure that God has placed on this earth. I think that's actually really harmful. It says it in the Bible that God has placed rulers. God has established this culture, this structure where, sure, the church is, responsible for spreading the gospel, but God uses authorities to maintain these protections over people. And sometimes the church wants to exclude the law enforcement in these situations, these criminal activity that happens with these failed pastors. And everything is supposed to be just hush hush, and they want to deal with it and maybe just fire the person and not bring on the police, not file a report. I mean, it just seems like everyone's trying to cover their own tracks. Everyone is trying to, show themselves as innocent, and that's fine, right? But like, are you really caring about the people that were affected? Are you giving them counseling? Are you like letting them know, hey, we did everything that we can. We involved the law enforcement. I mean, please stay and we'll walk with you through this. Come see us as much as we can. We can recommend a professional for you to speak to. Like, there's just a lot more that the Christian church needs to see themselves as. They are a part of this larger structure that God has placed. There are some situations in a different article, which I will also link in the description, where it actually talks about certain situations that happened. It says, the report lays out a timeline of the SBC Executive Committee's response to sexual abuse issues from 2000 to 2021. The EC is governed, the Executive Committee, is governed by 86 trustees who serve limited terms. During the SBC's own internal investigation, decisions regarding sexual abuse were largely left to the discretion of the Executive Committee President and Chief Executive Officer, as well as his closest advisors on staff, with high-level issues brought to the SBC President. According to the report, it said the trustees were not informed nor involved in the decision-making process. As a result, the report says the SBC's response to sexual abuse allegations over the course of 2 decades was largely driven by a small cadre, I don't know how to say that word,
cadre
of staff, as well as its outside lawyers. Abuse allegations were often mishandled in a manner that involved the mistreatment of survivors, the report said, adding that the primary concern of the staff and SBC's law firm was avoiding any potential liability for the SBC. That's what I'm saying. It's so sad when the leaders are just looking out for themselves and literally like they won't care about like the people that are dealing with issues and their pain. The report highlighted that a list started as early as 2007 was maintained by an EC staff member who had been documenting reports of abuse for more than a decade. However, there was no indication that EC staff took any action to ensure that the accused ministers were no longer in positions of power at SBC churches. The most recent list that was prepared by the staff member contained the names of 703 abusers, with 409 believed to be SBC affiliated at some point in time, according to the report. As part of its review, the Guidepost Solutions investigative team found 9 people accused of abuse remain in active ministry or connected to active ministry, 2 of whom appear to be associated with an SBC church. Numerous accounts included in the timeline indicate some within the EC leadership tried to minimize or ignore the allegations to protect SBC's reputation and avoid the risk of legal liability for sexual abuse at its churches. The victims who sought to shed light on the issues were considered opportunistic or having a hidden agenda of lawsuits, or acting as a professional victim, the report went on to say. The organization's communications arm, Baptist Press, also aided in shunning accusers to make them appear in an unflattering light and mischaracterize allegations of abuse. The report said, we now know that the very people who were saying that there could be no database, legally or in terms of Baptist policy, knew that there could be and were keeping a kind of shadow database themselves, not to protect victims, but to protect themselves, said Moore, the Christianity Today columnist. One of the senior leaders named in the investigation was former SBC President Johnny Hunt, who was reported by a SBC pastor and his wife to have sexually assaulted her on July 25, 2010, according to the report. Hunt responded to the report's claim on Twitter by saying, in part, "To put it bluntly, I vigorously deny the circumstances and characterizations set forth in the Guidepost report. I have never abused anybody." The report said investigators found the sexual assault allegation credible, in part because it was corroborated by witnesses. The timeline of events shows, the report says, how the derogatory attitude to survivors by some EC members continued into 2021. Absolutely. And if you have seen any of these comments on social media, you know that it's a topic that is so divided among Christians. It seems like, who do I trust? Is this person just trying to get attention for themselves, which is a terrible thing to think, right? But that's kind of the way that a lot of pastors talk about these things. Some people just call it like drama. It's not drama. This is real life. These are real people. This is a real investigation. There are witnesses. Like anywhere else outside of the church, we would believe someone is guilty because of witnesses. I mean, corroboration, come on. And just because we want to, I don't know, we want to believe that pastors are incapable of doing these things, or we want to, no one deserves to be treated this way just because of the greater good or whatnot. Like, honestly, like if you really want to be a good example to the world right now, you say, we own this and we're going to take those recommendations seriously, and we want to ask for your forgiveness for all the victims and for the terrible way we have handled this situation. We are flawed. We are sinful. I mean, talk about people that are so about telling everyone else about their sin, right? But yet, you are not capable of owning your own sin. That is awful. We should set the example about owning our sin and asking God to forgive us and asking others to forgive us of our sin. It makes me almost want to cry right now just thinking about that. It's awful. I think God is really sad and angry about that, about the hypocrisy. And like I said, it's not just here, but it's happening everywhere. And it's important not to assume that it's happening necessarily everywhere, but it could happen anywhere. And that's why it's important to take this seriously and to be very honest and transparent with your church about the measures that are going to be taking place in your church, so that you don't end up being in some investigation like the people that have made it to this investigation as abusers, or as people that are concealing abuse for, their own sake. If you are someone that has dealt with abuse, I'm very sorry that you went through that, and I'm sorry that if people did not help you in that situation, I can only imagine how much pain you went through. And I mean, maybe receive my apology if that will help in whatever way as a Christian. I definitely encourage you to seek help. It's hard sometimes because even within counseling, sometimes people might not see you in the truthful light of your experience. But take your pain and your experience to God, because He does care about you, and He's not going to shame you.
Oh, how I am loved by you, Jesus. what you're doing.